Hey guys, welcome back to the channel. I'm Marcus Davis here, bringing you another tutorial. Hopefully these have been helpful for you. I'm definitely trying to give you everything I can as far as what I know. Today we're going to be discussing gain staging, and we're doing gain staging because you asked for it. We're going to jump in and I'm going to share everything I know with you on the topic. Be sure to like and subscribe. It definitely helps me keep this thing going if you haven't already. And also share it with a friend who's also aspiring to get better at music and production. I love to see a community build here. I'd love to see us start to grow this community of people on this side of the world who are trying to evolve their talent. So this is my small contribution. Hopefully you get something out of it. And I definitely get something out of sharing the knowledge. For years, I've been wanting to share my knowledge, and YouTube is now giving me the opportunity to reach you guys and to hopefully find people that this information matters to. So let me know what matters to you. Definitely, I read every post. I comment every chance I can. And I just really want to see this thing grow. So gain staging today. Let's jump in and let's see if we can learn something new. Pretty much the definition of gain staging is nothing more than just managing the gain of your session. So really, it's a real simple concept, but it can get complex, especially when you're working with a lot of plugins, a lot of tracks. So what we're going to talk about now is just some basic things you can do to manage the gain in your session. First of all, we have to understand a little bit of vocabulary. So one, clipping, we're trying to keep from clipping, which is nothing more than just distortion. Basically reaching past that 0 point. Anything past this 0 point, if we look here on our meter here, anything past this 0 point is clipping, and it causes digital distortion, which is something that's unpleasant that we don't really want. The other thing is headroom. So what headroom is basically the space between the signal and the clipping point. So that space that you have in between there. So for instance, if I play the solo of the keys, so my keys are hitting right around right around 9 and 12. And this space between here before I get to the 0 is headroom. Okay, so basically what we want to try to do is we're trying to manage the headroom in the session, and we want to make sure we have plenty of space so that if we want to turn things up, we can without it clipping, right? Now, the problem with the digital world is that obviously clipping is a bad thing. In the analog world, you can push it a little bit. You can clip a little bit and it's a pleasant sound. But in the digital world, we want to make sure we're never hitting past that 0 point. And also not just on our mixer, but in our plugins. So for instance, let's say I add a compressor. So we'll go add a compressor real quick. Our compressor also has an output here, and we don't want to be clipping here either. So let's just see what this is doing to the kick. So right now we're safe, but let's just say, let's move the compressor down one, and let's put an EQ here. So now I've got an EQ and then a compressor, right? So let's say I wanted to make my kick fatter, just theoretically. So what I do is I go ahead and boost some EQ here. Now let's go look at my compressor. So you see now we're clipping. And the reason why we're clipping is because we just added 20 dB of gain in the low frequency range. So this EQ is essentially a volume level. And so when we turn the volume up here, it's also affecting how our compressor is responding and how much signal is being pumped into the compressor. So you can run into a lot of problems here because now I boost here, and then I get over to my compressor, and now I've got distortion happening, or vice versa. So what we want to do is we want to manage this gain right from the beginning of our mix. Right before we get into diving into the mix, we want to start managing the gain. So one of the easiest ways to do that is just lower the volume on the clips initially. So what we want to do is click on all these clips. We're just going to turn down the volume on these so that when we start feeding these into compressors and EQs and all kinds of fancy plugins, that we have the headroom needed to be able to add gain at these other stages, right? So that's why it's gain staging. So what we're doing is we're managing the gain at the beginning of the session, so that way we're prepared for the other stages of mixing. Okay, so what I'm going to do is I'm going to highlight everything. I'm going to go over to my information tab over here, go to the gain section, and I'm going to bring the volume down on all of these clips just by clicking here and dragging. So what this section is how we control the clip gain. And so whatever clip I'm selected on, I can control the gain right here. So what I'm going to do is select all of them. I'm going to watch my stereo out, and I'm going to bring this gain down until I'm happy with where the signal is falling. So let's listen. Let's play it now. Okay, so I'm going to bring it down just a little bit more. I'm going to probably go to minus 3.5 here and see where that puts me. Cool. So my output is at a safe spot. I've lowered all of the clips individually now. They're all nice and they're a little lower, which means there's going to be less signal being fed into my plugins, which is a good thing. Now the next step is to lower our faders a bit so that we also, we have plenty of headroom. So let's go ahead and highlight our faders. Let's take a listen. Now, a rule of thumb for me is I kind of gauge where I'm going to set the beginning of the session volume based on my kick. So my kick is usually the loudest and what drives the most energy in the track. So what I'm going to do is highlight everything here. I'm going to look at this kick channel, and I'm going to bring this fader down until my kick is at its loudest point. It's hitting right around this 12 mark here. Let's see. Okay, great. Notice how I didn't base it off of where I'm putting the fader. I base where I'm leaving this based off of where the signal is hitting. Where is the signal hitting on my meter? That's going to tell me how low to bring the fader or how loud to bring the fader. So I highlighted everything, brought everything down until my kick was falling somewhere around the 12. Now, if it's a little low in volume for you and you like to mix it a louder volume, you just turn up the volume on your sound card so that you can hear things louder. But your session will be at a nice, safe place where we can add volume to certain things and we have the headroom to do that. A lot of times what happens when you start with stuff too loud is when you get to the end of the mix and you're like, oh, you know what? I want to add a little bit. I want that kick to come through a little bit more, or I want that snare to pop a little bit more. When you go to reach for the volume faders to turn those up, you're already in the red. But if you start with things nice and low and you start mixing around that kick. So for instance, here's my kick. Now what I'm going to do is balance the volume of everything else off of that kick. Set this right there. Okay, now if I wanted to say I have plenty of headroom, if you look over here at my stereo, I have plenty of headroom. And so if I want to make that kick knock a little harder, I can push the kick now. So now my kick is coming through the mix a little bit more. I can push the snare more. If I wanted to add compression, let's go to my compressor. Look how much signal, how much headroom I have here, right? Plenty of headroom. If I want to make it knock a little bit, let's see what we have. Drums. Let's just grab a fast rock kick, see what that does. I made the kick nice and punchy. Let's see if there's another one. Cool. Let's go with this for now. So I can really drive this hard. I can do all kinds of creative things. I'm not clipping over here. I have plenty of headroom over here. See? I have plenty of headroom here to start to add effects. Now, as I start to add these effects, I got to keep an eye on my stereo out. Now, the solution is not just to turn the stereo out down. The solution is to grab all your tracks and bring them down in volume. And you're managing the headroom here. You're managing everything from clipping here by just bringing this down and keeping an eye on this, right? And so what it's going to do, and why it's so important, why gain staging is so important, is because the concept of mixing is, our focus is about clarity. Our focus is about making sure every instrument has its home, everything can be heard, felt exactly the way the producer or the mixing engineer is intending for it to be heard. Now, what happens when you start distorting a lot of different things accidentally is things don't become very clear. So you're working against yourself. Things become cluttered, distorted sounding, crackly sounding, all of those things. And what we want to do is we want to avoid that with a nice clean mix. Now, when we get to the mastering stage, we can worry about volume. We can get the overall mix to be as loud as we want it to be in the mastering stage. But in the mixing stage, we should be focused on clarity. We should be focused on making sure everything has its space and that the signal is treated as well as it can be. And so the first part of making sure that the signal is treated as well as it can be is making sure you're managing the gain in the session. Hey, thank you so much for staying to the end of the video. I hope that was a little bit helpful for you. Like I said, if there's something that I missed, feel free to leave it in the comments. We're all trying to evolve together. But for the most part, I did my best that I could to sum it up in layman's terms, the importance of gain staging and exactly what it is. And my approach with a lot of this stuff is to keep it as simple as possible. I want to demystify the audio world because the audio world can be real tricky. A lot of terminology, a lot of things out there, a lot of information out there that can just confuse someone starting out. So my goal is to kind of demystify some of that terminology, keep things simple, keep things digestible, keep things interesting. Because at the end of the day, we're not doing this for technical reasons. We're doing this for artistic reasons and creative reasons. And for those reasons, we need to get the technical stuff out of the way as quickly as possible so we can just have fun. And as we're having fun, we're comfortable and confident that we know that the things that we're doing are the right things. So I like to keep it simple, get the information out of the way, technical stuff out of the way, and let's just remember what this is all about. It's about sharing our art. Thank you so much for the time. Thank you for staying to the end of the video. I'll see you next time.